to please be mindful and respectful of our guests and the program. Ooh, there you go, see? All right, so now I am honored to bring up Evette Cardona, who is an LGBT, yes. She is an LGBT trailblazer. She's also currently the Vice President of Programs at the Polk Foundation of Chicago. I can't imagine how many people always want to say hi to Evette. But also Mona has a long history of activism with Amigas Latinas, with WACT, and she'll tell us a bit about WACT. So we're going to learn a little bit about, you know, lesbian organizing. But, right? That's the L word. The L word. Evette has been partnered with Mona Noriega for 18 years. 18 years. Wow. Oh my God. I can't even get a date. All right. So Evette grew up in Bucktown before it was, you know, fresh and gentrified and cool. It was cool then. It just wasn't cool for some white folks. It was one of the first Puerto Rican families that grew up in Bucktown. Is a product, she said this, not me, of the Catholic school system, right? So a little bit Catholic guilt there. But at 8 or 9, she knew she was different, quote unquote. And that difference was seen positive. Because when you described being different, you described it as being positive for the whites in the neighborhood. And I was and we went there, right? We talked a little bit about what does that mean? That was that different, that they said, but you're different. What does that mean? Maybe we should just open up if you want to say anything of that.
Well, hello everybody. Thank you for coming out today. It's so nice to see so many of my old friends and comrades in arms and my new ones. Tanya there, hey. And thank you for doing this. This is really wonderful. It's taking me back to the day. I grew up in Bucktown. I was born and raised in Chicago, and Puerto Rican from Chicago, I always say. Growing up in predominantly white Polish neighborhood, Bucktown was very Polish and German, and going to Catholic schools and being one of the few Latinas in the class. I already knew I was different, and how that was often presented to me was that, oh, Evette, yeah, you're Puerto Rican, but you know, you're different. You're not like, you know, like those other Puerto Ricans. And, you know, at the time I thought, okay, that's cool, right? I mean, because I'm being seen as, you know, like I'm the good Puerto Rican, and you know, it took a long time to kind of come into that consciousness and that identity that no, I'm not really different from those other Puerto Ricans, the ones they're probably talking about, the ones in Humboldt Park, or the ones that, you know, were lower income, or however that was defined, but so that I always knew already that I was different, and then also knowing that I liked girls, that made me even more different, and I was not going to go there because just being different as a Puerto Rican growing up in a predominantly white neighborhood was, you know, a delicate balancing act already, you know. Plus I was a little tomboy, and I got confused looking that I looked like a boy, and people's parents would say, oh, I thought you were a boy, and you know, and now I'm like, okay, whatever, you know, but, you know, at the time it was just a lot of those kinds of messages that I was getting that I was not doing things sort of the right way.
What did your parents say? You know, you're a tomboy. Did you ever get encouraged in any way to change the way that you were dressing, or what you wanted to pick, or when you went out shopping? Anything in particular? I'm not saying that. I love your taste, by the way.
No, not really. I mean, as you know, being Puerto Rican, I, you know, did then grow up in a family that really embraced the Puerto Rican identity and did instill in me that identity, so that if I did come home with, questions about how I looked different, or my hair wasn't straight enough, or my lips were too big. My mom was really good at saying, you are a proud Puerto Rican, young woman, and you don't apologize for anything, and those lips will mean, juicy kisses later, and I was like, thanks, Mom. And in terms of dress, no, they always just let me be who I was, and there was never any, a lot of that internalized stuff was really me putting it on to me, I say that when I eventually, came out, I realized my lesbianism was rooted in a lot of shame, because I did not have any role models growing up, and, so just growing up again, just being different for so many reasons, but they were always there for me.
We're gonna get there then. So we're at 8 or 9, right? But I'm gonna jump over to Whacked. Yeah, no, jump over to Whacked. And this is when you're doing, no. Let's go back, because Whacked is a little bit too far ahead. So you begin to realize that you're different at 8 or 9. When does Evette Cardona come out?
Well, so I realized I was different, but again, I get through grade school, I go to high school, and I don't go there. I don't touch that identity around my lesbianism, because all the messages all I ever heard was, lesbianism, homosexuality is a sin, it's a disease, it's a sickness, and that wasn't me. And I remember in high school a couple of girls that were pointed out as being, lesies, or if you were on the softball team, it's because you were a lesi. It just made me sort of kind of recoil that I just wasn't going to go there and kind of be associated with, with people that were perceived to be, that something was wrong with them. That wasn't going to happen. So got through high school, had my boyfriends, had a boyfriend that came out later. That's a whole other story. Right? He's in Florida, love him, Jose. And went to college, University of Illinois, Chicago, and fell in love with a woman, and was married to a cop, and we proceeded to have an 8-year, very private, discreet relationship, as I think a lot of women have. I was on the down low before I even knew what down low meant, and I didn't say I was a lesbian, she didn't say she was a lesbian, we didn't even say we were bi. She said she loved me, and that was it, and asked me once, was it that I love her or did I love women? And I said, I love you, but I knew that I loved women with a capital W, but that if I went there, that it would so change my life, I just wasn't ready to do it. And so, again, this internalized stuff was really deep. And so I had a relationship, very private, discreet relationship for a long time. And then when we broke up, then I came out. And so I sort of did it a little bit backwards. And just finally had to, just say I can't, not be who I am. And probably had also started to meet lesbians that were just okay and just cool and just, whatever. And some of my early organizing, if you can call it, or my activism had nothing to do with sort of gay stuff. It was feminist stuff, or Save the Seals, the baby seals, fight for the environment, things like that. But it wasn't until I sort of left that relationship that I finally, came out with a vengeance.
Sure did.
Make up for lost time.
And so then you start looking for this community, right? Then you're like, where are all the... You wanted to meet every single Latina lesbian in Chicago. So you were scouting. So how would you introduce yourself at a party after that?
Right, so after I came out, I went through a phase where I felt I had to tell practically everybody that I had a friendship with or relationship with that I was a lesbian. And I would tell people, you may not know this, but, I'm a lesbian and I'm finally out, and, half the time they'd look at me like, huh? Yeah, we knew that, and I eventually had to change my story and say, you may not know this about me, or no, you may know this about me, but I need to say it, that I'm a lesbian. And when I would put it that way, people would understand that, because then it would explain a lot of who I was and how I acted in the past and what this relationship was about. So it was really an important part of my process to, kind of make, I don't know, I guess peace with people. And pretty much everybody knew, except there was one woman that was like, really? You're gay? Wow, I had no idea. So I felt it was worth, doing that. And to this day, there are 2 people from that part of my life that I did not have a chance to say the words to. Now I'm like over it, but I remember there's a man and a woman that were in my life that I would have loved to have been able to say, because it was almost like I felt like they did not know the total me. So then for about a year, I probably went through a phase where I would meet somebody and be like, hi, I'm Evette, I'm a lesbian. Just because it was like I just had to lead with it. It was just this, the slingshot was so pulled tight back, I had to let it go and wanted to shout it from the Sears Tower. And I had somebody say to me, why do you have to tell everybody that you're lesbian? It's like, well, I just have a lot of time to make up, and it just, so I have to.
So you're in search of Latina lesbians. And what about whacked? Where does whack come in? Whacked. And what is whacked? It's abbreviated.
Right, sorry. So I finally come out, and I have a really good close friend who's the first woman I came out to, Marilee Snyder. And she was very gentle with me when I came out. It took a long time to just get the words to come out, and I'll never forget just being in her house, and we were just talking, and I think her cat jumped up on my lap, and she said something like, oh yeah, cats just love lesbians. I just kind of walked away. And it was like the permission I needed to kind of say, I know something about you, just say it. And it took a long night, and I just finally said it, and then after that, she then wanted to start organizing and finding all the multicultural lesbians in the city of Chicago. And I was like, Marilee, I've just come out. She took me to my first Pride Parade. This was 1993. I was 31. Said, I've just come out. I don't really want to start organizing and kind of taking the leadership role. Can't I just find something to fall into finally? I was like, no, it wasn't that easy. So we started this group called WACT, Women of All Colors and Cultures Together. It was modeled after MACT, Men of All Colors Together, which grew out of Black and White Men Together. She knew one of the board members, and we started attending some of their meetings just to see what this organizing thing was about. Wondering, could a group like this for lesbians exist? Like lesbians of all colors. And we decided to form a group called Women of All Colors and Cultures Together, WACT. And it met on the first Sundays of the month in different women's homes throughout the city of Chicago. And it was a potluck, because when you put lesbians together, you have to have food and a potluck. The first 2 or 3, women would sit around and talk about, what it meant to be lesbian and multicultural and in a city like Chicago. But by the 3rd or 4th brunch, we had 50, 60, 70 women attending. And they were a mix, white, black, some Latina, Asian, Greek. Remember, there was a Greek group that was trying to start, and so the discussion stopped, and it was about eating. The motto was, a girl's gotta eat. And so food would constantly arrive, and we would just keep eating, and we would stop and make announcements, and that's how the little WAC newsletter started, where if you said something, you announced something, you owned it. And your name would go in there, and this newsletter would get mailed, again, before Facebook and email and everything. And the mailing list grew to like 350 women. And I wondered where the Latinas were, because I had not really grown up with Latinas in my close circle. And so my job was to sort of find all the Latina lesbians in Chicago outside of Paris Dance on salsa night. Right? So there was a club called Paris, and on Friday nights we would have salsa night, and you knew that the Latinas were there. But it wasn't very conducive to sort of socializing, because it was a lot of, you know, it just wasn't conducive to sort of networking and socializing. So I finally met about 10, 11, 12 Latinas that would come to the WACT brunches. I met Juanita Crespo, who helped me to start forming this group. We attended the ALMA, Association of Latino Men for Action, galas at Tanya's. Those were the first sort of gay events that I went to. And slowly started to meet a few Latinas. I met Mona then through organizing for WACT, and she showed up at a meeting one day at MACT and said that somebody must have called you to come and talk to us about organizing in the women's community, and you mentioned YENA, which is the Latina Lesbianas en Nuestro Ambiente group, which was before Amigas, and I had been trying desperately to find out about YENA. Anytime I would ask somebody about it, they were like, I don't know about it. You know, it used to form and used to be a group, and Mona knew about it, and so I sort of latched on to Mona. Like, tell me about YENA, tell me what this work is like. And she had been opening the Lambda legal office and had been sort of done with organizing with Latinas. It's not easy to organize in your community, and organizing with your friends is not easy because it can get mixed between a social group and the real hard work that has to be done. But we kept in touch, and can I hear an amen back here? And you know, we kept in touch, and WACT kept meeting monthly, and I finally met enough Latinas. Should I keep going? And then in June of 1995, which is interesting that you talk about 1995 as the height of the disease, we were in a home in Rogers Park, and there was another, 60 women at this brunch, and there were about 15 Latina women sitting around talking, and somebody said, why don't we do something like this for us, for Latinas? And I always say that that was my window of opportunity to sort of say, yeah, let's do this for us. And so the next month, July 1995, July 15th, 1995, we met in the home of Christine Garza's mother. And that was the weekend of the heat wave in Chicago that killed several hundred people. I always say that that's when Amigas was born, out of that heat. So we met that first day for our first plática. The flyer that went out said what would happen if you put 10 Latina women, Latina lesbians in a room. A, we'd all fall in love with each other. B, we'd all start fighting with each other. C, we'd have amazing discussion and dialogue about who we are, and D, all of the above. And so that was the start of Amigas Latinas, and every month we would do WACT on the first Sunday, Amigas on the third Sunday, and we followed the same model, but because it was a smaller group of women, we would actually have a discussion topic. So, how out is out, coming out to your children. There were a lot of mothers in the group. Coming out to yourself, health issues, alcoholism, domestic violence. Every month we would pick a topic, and it was clearly the need was there, and it was all word of mouth. We never advertised anywhere, not even in Municip Times. Alicia Vega had posted one of the first blurbs about wanting to meet other Latina lesbians, and that's how she and I met. But we never advertised again because we were very respectful that we were women meeting in women's homes. It was a privilege to do that, but it was also a safety issue, and we were about creating safe space. So that's how Amigas was born, and sort of continues to today.
I love that. That deserves an applause. I love that. So now that we got to Amigas, how that started, let's talk about how Mona and Evette started. No, really. So I know that you met through obviously wanting to connect at that time, right? But that's not when you started dating, right? So how did that happen?
Oh my goodness. So how did that happen? What did you tell him the first time? So I'm this young baby dyke, this 31-year-old baby dyke, right? Coming out, trying to find my community. and going to Paris, Friday salsa nights, which was was really a beautiful thing, because with organizing, you knew that you could show up there and there would be somebody there, either from the WACT group or from Amigas or both, and you could just then dance. And I some of the history I've heard about the bars just seemed to sort of be kind of breaking down, and it was just about socializing and partying and having a good time. And then the next Sunday, you'd all be sitting around in somebody's living room talking about how, my mother hates me, or, I have to come out to my kids or something. So it was just really an amazing time. So during the WACD brunch, I remember Jackie Anderson. Some of you may know Jackie Anderson, long-time colleague of Vernita's. And she would say to me, how's the Latina group going? I said, it's really hard, you meet, women, and don't want to come, and they don't want to talk about it. It just, and I can't get them to. And she's like, well, you have to talk to Mona. Yeah, I talked to Mona, but she's busy and Lambda, and and I call her, and somebody else answers the phone, and who's this? It's Evette. Can I talk to Mona? And and Jackie said to me, use Mona as your mentor. She's been doing this work in the Latina community. It's like, okay, so little by little, we just kind of got to know each other. We'd see each other, and we would see each other, and I think this was important. We would see each other outside of Latina and Latino queer events. We would see each other at other Black events, whatever, with AIDS events. We would see each other in different spaces. And we shared that sort of commonality of just, again, being Latina, but growing up in Chicago and seeing outside of just, that community, that neighborhood. And, she was no longer with this woman, and we kept, then she would be coming to Amigas, and, oh yeah, I remember now. And then we were having a steering committee meeting for Amigas Latinas. Amigas then had helped the YEGO conference in 1998 that was put on, right? It was a real transformative moment for the community, for Amigas. And what grew out of the YEGO conferences, as difficult as some parts of it were, was that a steering committee formed for Amigas Latinas. Aixa Diaz got involved, Mary Torres, Mona and I were already organizing in that. And we had a steering committee meeting at my apartment one night, and people came over and were like, hey Mona, hi, you're here already. And we're thinking it's because she never left from the previous night. So my little downloadness was still happening. We were still a little bit, it was really through organizing that, we got together, and and the rest is sort of history.
Congratulations. And you were part of the civil unions at Millennium Park, right? That happened, Tracy, 2011, yeah. I asked you this because I've always wanted to ask you this. It is my personal question. And I'm saying a lot with this question, actually. But I think a lot of, I think it's not a secret that, a lot of queer, LGBT, Latino, young people, young adults, myself included, have always put your relationship on this pedestal, right? Because we don't have that many role models, right, of couples who are queer, who are gay, who are lesbian, who have been together for a long time. So since I came out, I've known Mona and Evette, Julio Rodriguez and David Zinsky. And so I think that, the same, right, putting them in this pedestal of relationships. Have you ever felt that pressure in your relationship of being one of these long-standing Latina lesbian couples?
I've thought a lot about this since we talked. I have not felt pressure to be a couple. I mean, I love her. Look at that. Thank you. But there have been moments in the 18-year life of Amigas and just organizing in the community, where I think people have put us up on, it's a pedestal that is not really in a good way, where people have said things to us, said things sideways, said things that we've heard about that that implies that we're sort of like too good, or that people can't live up to our expectations, so they don't want to disappoint us, or that we might just kind of intimidate people, because we've been together for so long and we're so public, not only about being Latina and lesbian. I mean, for me, finally, once I was out of the closet, I'm never going back there. As much as you come out the rest of your life, right? Thank you. But that for some people it was like too public. It's like, why do you have to put it out there? Or, why are you raising money? It's all about money, and organizing is not easy. It's about raising money. But I think that people just did, put something on us that it would just feel weird. I mean, I still can't really answer it the right way, but I have felt that people have shied away from us, have stopped talking to us, have sort of dropped out of our lives, have dropped out of the community, and so that when they see us, it's like, it's kind of a repulsive, it's kind of like we repel them because we are so sort of out that they, I think they impose this thing on us that we're kind of, up on this pedestal, and I wish that wasn't the case, but it has happened in the past.
Thank you. My last question is the one that I asked David, which is, Bernita talked about building community, right? And how do we continue to build community? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got when I was starting Amigas was that if I was going crazy trying to meet women, and every time I would meet a Latina at a work brunch, it's like, hi, I'm Evette, I'm Latina, we need to form a group, and they'd be like, oh, I don't know, okay, take it easy, I'm here for the food, girls gotta eat. And somebody finally said, look, Evette, if you want a group for 10 women, you're gonna have to meet 50. Because just because a woman is Latina and lesbian doesn't mean she wants to organize, she wants to raise the flag, she wants to champion the cause. And that really took me back and just made me just kind of exhale, take a breather, and just kind of, okay, you're absolutely right that again, it is hard enough being Latina and queer in your daily life, just being Latina, just being a woman, to take all that stuff and assume that somebody's going to want to champion the cause. That was a real lesson for me. So I think as we create community, which is important to do, and again, if all you do is walk this world being true to yourself, being queer, being proud of being Latina, never apologizing for who you are, that will always start to create community. And trust me, the work is always there. So if you're not ready to organize, that's okay. If you're organizing and you need to take a break, then take a break, because the work is always there. We hope that we change from the need to being a space about affinity and just about celebration of who we are. But we know that as we celebrate who we are in that positive way, there's still somebody else back there that is still in need. This community is constantly being replenished. Somebody is coming out today, somebody will come out tomorrow, somebody will be 14 coming out, somebody will be 40, somebody will be 64 coming out for the first time. The community is always being replenished with people coming out and needing space and community to be. So however you do it, however you come to it, to organizing, you're true to yourself and you keep the bigger prize in mind, keep your eye on that prize, because organizing can get really tough, down in the trenches. And again, we organize with our friends, right? We love each other, we organize with each other, but it can get really hard, so you've got to keep your eye on the bigger prize. And always come back. We always need people coming and championing the cause.